The exhaust gas recirculation, or EGR valve, is one of the engine's most important emission controls for reducing oxides of nitrogen or NOx emissions. The EGR system recirculates a portion of the exhaust gases into the intake manifold, reducing the combustion temperature and therefore decreases NOx emissions. Common engine drivability symptoms associated with a defective EGR valve include an engine that idles rough or stalls at stop signs, poor engine performance or surging at highway speeds, and uncontrollable pinging or detonation. An EGR valve should be inspected every 12 to 15,000 miles for proper operation. There are three basic types of EGR valves being used on today's vehicles: a ported vacuum type, positive back pressure, and negative back pressure. As a result, there are different testing procedures for each depending on the type. This video will demonstrate how to test the two most common, the ported and the negative back pressure types. To determine what type of EGR valve your vehicle is equipped with, refer to a Haynes manual. Let's look at how to test EGR valves on the vehicle. The tools you will need include a hand vacuum pump, an inspection mirror, and a service manual for your particular vehicle. Whenever working on a vehicle with the engine running, make sure you are working in a well-ventilated area. Place the vehicle in park or neutral and set the parking brake. First, inspect all vacuum hoses going to the EGR valve for cracks, kinks, broken sections, and proper connection. If damage is found, repair or replace the hose. First, we'll look at testing a ported EGR valve. Run the engine until it is at operating temperature and shut it off. Disconnect the vacuum hose from the valve. You may want to wear gloves to prevent burns. In its place, connect a hand vacuum pump. Apply 10 inches of vacuum to the valve. The diaphragm plate should move upward, opening the valve, and should remain open for at least 20 seconds. If the diaphragm plate cannot be easily observed, use an inspection mirror to ease viewing. If the vacuum reading drops within 20 seconds, or the diaphragm plate does not move up, there is a leak in the diaphragm. Replace the EGR valve if a leak is found. Release the vacuum from the pump. Start the engine, and again apply 10 inches of vacuum to the valve. As the valve opens, the engine RPM should drop, causing the engine to stumble or stall. This indicates the valve is operating properly. If no change is noticed, the valve is not working properly and must be replaced. Next, we'll demonstrate how to test a negative back pressure EGR valve. With the engine off, disconnect the EGR valve vacuum hose, and in its place, connect a hand vacuum pump. Apply 10 inches of vacuum to the valve. The diaphragm plate should move upwards, opening the valve, and should remain open for at least 20 seconds. If the diaphragm plate cannot easily be observed, an inspection mirror will ease viewing. If the vacuum reading drops within 20 seconds, or the diaphragm plate does not move, there is a leak in the diaphragm. Replace the valve if a leak is found. With the help of an assistant, again, apply 10 inches of vacuum to the valve, and immediately start the vehicle and observe the diaphragm plate. The plate should move downward, closing the valve during engine cranking and startup. If the diaphragm plate does not move downward, replace the valve. Many late model vehicles are now coming equipped with either an electronic or digital EGR valve. These types of EGR valves are controlled by the vehicle's onboard computer and therefore require different testing procedures. Refer to a service manual for specific testing procedures on these types of EGR valves. An EGR valve may also be tested off the vehicle using a NAMCCO EGR tester. Refer to the directions included with the EGR valve tester for detailed procedures. The directions cover the three common types of EGR valves and list the specific tools needed to bench test each of them. If you remove an EGR valve for testing and find it is okay, always reinstall the EGR valve using a new gasket. This will prevent exhaust leaks around the base of the valve.
Now let's briefly review the steps for testing a ported EGR valve. First, inspect all vacuum lines and replace any that are cracked or broken. Because certain checks will be made with the engine running, make sure the automatic transmission is in park, or if it's a standard transmission, in neutral with the parking brakes set. Also, always stand to the side of the vehicle when the engine is running and work in a well-ventilated area or outside. Run the engine to reach operating temperature, then shut it off. Disconnect the vacuum hose leading to the valve and in its place connect a hand vacuum pump. Apply 10 inches of vacuum to the valve and watch the diaphragm plate. The plate should move upward and the vacuum applied should remain constant for at least 20 seconds. If no diaphragm movement is noticed or it will not hold vacuum, replace the valve. Then start the engine and allow it to idle. Once again, apply 10 inches of vacuum to the valve. As the valve opens, a significant drop in engine RPM should be noticed. If there's no change in RPM, replace the valve. To test a negative back pressure EGR valve, once again, connect a hand vacuum pump to the valve and apply 10 inches of vacuum. If the vacuum plate does not move or a drop in your reading is observed within 20 seconds, replace the valve. Then start the engine and again observe the diaphragm plate. The plate should move downward, closing the valve. No movement means the valve is defective and should be replaced.